far on the large scale speaking platform is to deliver comparative, non-biased harm reduction education. The amount of pet parents out there that just want to know that this isn't some ludicrous statement that this CBD can help all these things. How much do you give? Where do you give it? When do you give it? There's so many questions out there that pet parents, again, they know something's there, but they have no idea what to do because they are misguided by the lack of education. And so before we can start helping with, specific individualized consultations, which we can do at the same time, but we have to just understand that primary large-scale education is going to be bringing such paramount value to the community for veterinarians, for pet parents, for pets, and for anyone who has to even talk to pet parents. So that includes dispensaries, that includes, smoke and bake shops that are having people come in and say, can I give this to my dog? Who knows what that level of education is? Well, that's something that I'm driven to bring to the entire industry as much as possible, so we can just get some basic information out there of what the comparisons are between animals and humans. And that's really where I've started out.
Well, I think that's a great thing to do. There's no doubt about it. But let's touch on that. Two questions to go along with that. First and foremost, who is going to oversee the CBD realm, if you will? And then secondly, how do we change the laws so that veterinarians can actually, have CBD as a pharmaceutical option, if you will, in their repertoire?
Absolutely. So to answer the latter quickly first, the push is going to be through individual state veterinary medical associations, I believe. So backing up your associations, the states that are looking to be progressive in the field and to just allow, like we talked about, just discussion of it, to not make it such a burden on these pet parents that feel like they are at a loss. They feel like they're at a loss because they don't know, for example, that there was just a study that was done on mice to show finally there was something to worry about. They don't know they should be giving 5 milligrams. They don't even know if the product they're giving even has enough CBD in it or not, because they don't know to look for third-party testing. So it's really getting a push to have, not only as we've had finally the American medical associations, the different sectors and those private institutions helping to push for regulation and for understanding, we have to get behind our veterinary medical associations that are also showing the idea and interest to get some understanding of this, to get some push to allow for progressiveness in the political field and in the regulatory status.
Wow, Doc, I can't say, how amazing it is just to hear you say that. And I think the dialogue is the real key there. When people understand that you can't, well, first and foremost, let me back up a little bit. It's when we talk about from a veteran standpoint, we go into the VA and a veteran wants a recommendation for medical cannabis, right? They can't walk in and say, hey, Doc, I want some of that weed, man. Will you make me a recommendation for it? You don't do that, right? So Absolutely. It's going to be the same thing with your veterinarian. You walk in and Dr. Pilossoph, if I come to you and say, hey, Doc, I've really been hearing a lot of great things about CBD as a treatment option for my pet. What can I do to get more information about that? I guess that's a question to you. And then how do you physicians help educate each other on what options are out there?
Right, exactly. And it is, because it's tough to answer that first part. I right now cannot answer that question without technically breaking the law.
Absolutely.
And so, that's a difficult, that comes down to the moral principles of it. You want to help this person. We know, for example, if dogs have a Dravet syndrome of sorts, because dogs do get idiopathic epilepsy at young ages. So are there certain, for example, cases where we can use an Epidiolex compound to help these patients, which we are diagnosing with something called idiopathic epilepsy? That's a conversation I can't have in my practice right now with my clients and with my patients.
Well, I know you can't have it, Doc, but the one thing I can tell our listeners is that I have absolutely 100% unequivocally seen it with my own eyes. A dog having a seizure that got some of our CBD oil right out from the bottle, put it in his mouth, and within 20 seconds was not having a seizure anymore. And that dog has not had seizures in months now, when they were having a seizure about once a month. And that's black and white, unequivocal data in my own mind, right? I mean, I've seen it. I know that's fact, but unfortunately, there's no black and white data to back up what we're saying. It's all anecdotal evidence. So when we're talking about that black and white data that's in other countries and stuff, is there anything that our listeners can take to their veterinarian to try to provide to them or help them educate themselves on it? Or is it something that our listeners should just pick up the phone and call their congressman or their senator and say, hey, we need to change this for veterinarians to make sure that they have the option to make cannabis a treatment option in their practice? How do we get involved? How do we get our listeners a call to action?
Right. I'd say that first, that story, Josh, that is what keeps us going every day. The power in that anecdotal story. Who's to say that anecdotal evidence is not something that can support the mission to fight through? Who's to say that? Who's to say that the studies they so-called want are the only thing that is valid? In my mind, unfortunately, I don't agree with the very limited and blinded structure that we have, because I think that a power in one story, let alone the hundreds that we do hear on a regular basis, is something that we can hold true. And that's on an individual community scale, that's something we can use to fight through. But ultimately, to get pushed through and to get something on black and white paper that will finally allow us, yes, it involves, writing letters to those that have the power to then go to the even higher powers, writing a letter to your congressman, writing a letter into your veterinary medical association saying, listen, I need to tell you about this because this is not made up. This is a true story, X, Y, and Z. I've seen it.
That's a really great point you bring up, Doc. And I don't think I've even thought about that, but writing that letter to the American Veterinarians Association, is that what you said?
Yep, your local, state, and national veterinary medical associations. They are all, it's just like in the human field. There's different levels and there's different subsectors that you can definitely write a letter into. No problem at all.
It's really powerful. And I never even thought about that. So thank you so much for that. That's a great recommendation. And I hope our listeners really take that to heart. And, this is a call to action. This is not only just listening to you as a veterinarian that's trying to do his best work and take care of his patients the best way he knows how, but he needs the tools to do that, right? And unfortunately, right now, you don't have cannabis as a tool.
Absolutely. No, not at all. And so it's something that I'm optimistic that in maybe 10 to 15 years, we will have it in our quote unquote dog medicine cabinet. But as of right now, it's a push to just get the truth out and to get some backing that maybe this is something we can consider. And then maybe in the future, it'll be something we will consider. And then in the future of that, it will be something we always consider.
Well, Doc, let's talk about getting that truth out. So if our listeners want to get in contact with you, first and foremost, how can they do that? And then two, are you speaking on a circuit right now? How do they, if somebody wants to have you come in and talk to them, how do they get in contact with you? Is that something that you do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like I said, that's truly where I'm trying to make my most harm reduction impact right now in the field, because it is tough. It's tough not to take one side over the other or become too, ostentatious when you're pushing something like this. So I'm very careful and I'm very calculated on where I speak, but that is exactly what the mission is to create as much large scale speaking opportunities and a breadth of reach in where I can finally just enlighten those that are wondering. And so, like I said, I've had a few opportunities to finally come out and do this on a larger scale. One of them was at the USCC Expo in Miami, which was in June. I was able to be brought up as a guest into Canada a couple months ago. I have a couple more coming up next year, but the best way, honestly, to get in touch with me is through either email, which I can give at the end, or LinkedIn is where I honestly have found the most success in recent times to really connect with a strong community.
I'll tell you what, why don't you go ahead and give us your LinkedIn information? We're down to about a minute. If you want to just do a little closing remarks, and then just give our listeners your contact information on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can just search my name. So under there, it's going to be Zac Pilossoph, which is ZAC. Last name is Pilossoph, so it's Pilossoph. And then under that, next to that, it'll have fear-free certified DVM. And
is that fear-free? Like you don't have any fear of doing anything?
Well, you use it colloquially like that. Yes, there is maybe an alternative meaning, but it's actually something I very hold true to myself as well. It's a licensing that you can get, a private entity licensing as a veterinarian that allows you to be trained in the most respectable ways in how to feed off the energies that animals give you, and to use as minimal handling as possible to get the job done in the most mutualistic of ways.
Wow. Well, Dr. Zac Pilossoph, I can't say thank you enough for joining us today. And for our listeners, you and I have talked about it offline. I want them to know that this is something that's going to be an ongoing segment. We're going to have Vets for Vets talking about, veterinarians and taking care of our furry friends, if you will, and four-legged friends, two-legged friends, three-legged friends. And your expertise and knowledge and guidance in this process is going to be a monthly podcast for us, and it's something we're really excited about. So, Dr. Pilossoph, thank you so much for taking the time here on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast, where you can find us at any of your local watering holes, if you will, for your podcast. So we're on iHeartRadio, iTunes, you're on Alexa, we're on Google Listen app, and you're just amazing, sir, a wealth of knowledge. We can't say thank you enough for joining us, and we're really looking forward to having you on next month as well. Stay tuned, guys. We really appreciate your time. Dr. Pilossoph, thank you so much, and I'm going to let you close it out, sir.
Josh, again, thank you so much. The impact you've had as well, it's really unquantifiable. So it's just an honor to be here today and to hopefully be contributing as the months go on. I'm really excited for it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. We appreciate you joining in. Tune in next time.
Line over there, over there. Send the word over there. That the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming. The drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.